episode 2 of the Hope for Illinois podcast, and I'm really excited to have my running mate, Carolyn Schofield, here with me. Carolyn, how you doing?
Good. How are you? It's great to be here.
I'm glad to have you with us. You know, we wanted actually to have you in the first episode, but we knew this was going to be family week, and I figured you're like me, you want to talk about your family, so we shifted it around. So thanks for waiting for the second episode, but this gives us a chance to talk about our families, and I know that's something that's important to you.
Absolutely. So I'm glad I get the chance to talk about them today. They love it when I do.
So a lot of people don't realize that there was a lot of thought put into our pairing here. That there was a reason why we're working together. Both of us have the skills necessary to serve in the roles that we're asking for the voters to vote for us. But we also very much complement each other, where I've got 20 years of political experience and I do understand policy decently well, but my experience is in politics. And you've got a significant amount of policy experience. You understand politics, but your background is in policy. And for anything to get done in politics, but especially a state like Illinois that is as political as it is, you need both. You need to know the policy backwards and forwards so you know how you can construct a consensus plan that could generate support, but you also need to know how to play the politics of it to get that done. And so our pairing, again, is not accidental. We bring very complementary skills, and I love working with you, again, because of that policy background that you have. You really are very knowledgeable about the things that working families in Illinois face and what can be done to solve them. So talk about that aspect of your background and why that's going to be an asset as the Lieutenant Governor of Illinois.
Well, thanks. Yeah. And I think, I've had all different levels of experience as far as the local level, and really what I've done started at the community level. And I will share a little story. You always say the reason you do this is for your family and for your son. And really, our reasons are exactly the same. And I always think back to, when I had little ones, which are now all adults. But the first time I can think about it was really, my son was about 1.5, and I had just taken him to daycare, and I came back home and was getting ready for work, and that's when I turned on the news and 9/11 had happened. It was on 9/11, and the first thing I did was I ran and got my son after I saw that, and I just held him in my arms, and I thought, what world did I bring him into? And I'm sure you've had those same moments as every parent has when something happens. You're like, what is this world I brought them into? And then you realize, I want to do something about it. So that's when I got involved, locally, and I've been involved at the county and at the state level. So really just constantly wanting to make that change and make a better place for those kids to live. Yeah.
I mean, I know, just looking at the future here in Illinois, and I've talked about it a lot recently about just how behind Illinois government is. And, I see that, my little boy is going to grow up in a world where AI is common. It's I can't even comprehend the world he's going to grow up in. And so I think about how backwards and behind Illinois is, and the need for us to make significant improvements and do so very, very quickly, because I think I've said it, and I said it on the live this week, that, we are barreling towards our AI driven future while still running government on, slates and it's this, we're not prepared. We're not ready. And I have the same thought. What world did I bring my little boy into? And now baby number 2, what world are we bringing them into? I don't feel like Illinois is ready for this. We're not ready for our future. And are we going to get there with the 2 major party candidates that are running? The governor's proven he can't be that guy. It's 8 years in, and we still have many of the same problems in Illinois. And you've got the Republican candidate who shows no interest or desire to even think about policy, or maybe read a white paper and understand some sort of policy before opening your mouth. I don't have confidence that either of these 2 older men are going to be able to make this state one that my little boy is going to want to grow up in. And I know you said your kids are older, but that's sort of what drives me is I want there to be a future in the state that I raise my kid in. And right now, I just don't feel like that's the case.
And I agree with you on that. And I think that, when you say we're stuck, that's absolutely the reason why. We just haven't evolved. And that's part of the policy aspect. There's plenty of data and research. There's reports and white papers, like you said, that have the solutions that are there. But nobody is willing to take that risk to actually evolve. Yep. And that's what this whole entire movement is about, is how do we take all the information, the knowledge that we have. We know the solutions, but it takes that risk to actually evolve to the level that we need to and actually make something happen and make it a better place. So I think that, that's just so exemplary of what we're doing here. And we're doing it for the same reasons. We're doing it for, our children and our grandchildren's futures. So, and everyone else is out there too. So, it's exactly where I want to be, and glad I can be here with you.
Well, and I think you talk about, the changes that are required. These are not changes that are going to be at the edges. I mean, you have a government in Illinois, the state level. The budget is imbalanced every year because we have a structural deficit. And I know there are people who use that phrase to say that we need more revenue. We need more, there's two sides of this. One side says no revenue, zero revenue, everything's fine. The other side just says, let's just keep raising taxes. The truth is in between. But there is the way that we structure our government is part of the problem. It's why every year we've got to go find new things to plug the holes, because you've got a government system and a revenue system that's based on 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. I mean, you talk about, you and I have had conversations about the sales tax and, how things are funded. I've talked a long time about the property tax and how our schools are funded and our municipalities are funded. The way we go about doing things in Illinois is so broken, but no one seems interested in actually fixing it. We've got the number of units of government in this state is astronomical compared to any other state, but it would require a significant amount of political capital to get that changed. We haven't had leaders who are willing to expend that level of political capital. The changes that are required in Illinois are changes that will potentially jeopardize somebody's ability to get reelected, because they're going to be hard for people. Nobody likes change. And we've got plans to do things in a way that would be revenue neutral, or in some cases lower people's taxes. So it's not about raising people's taxes, but change is hard. And you need a team that's willing to come in and say, you know what, we might just be here for one term. And that could be what happens here. But if you're going to see Illinois embrace the future, evolve like we need to, there are going to need to be significant changes structurally to the way that we approach government in this state. And that might mean that we have one term and we're booted out of office, but it's the right thing. And frankly, I don't see the Republican candidate or the Democrat candidate being willing to be that kind of sacrificial leader to say, put me in, and you know what, even if it only means one term, I'm going to fix the problems.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I mean, I've said that every time I've run for office, I have said that. It's not about, the next 4 years. It's about what can I do today to make a difference in the next 4 years. And we've taken those risks over time. I mean, I've done it at the county level, and it's hard to do that. You have to convince people of that. But the one thing, if you know it's the right thing to do and you're able to continue down that path and do it for that reason, others are willing to come along with you and take that risk. And then in the end, I mean, we've been nationally recognized for a lot of the work that's been done. So it can be there. The reward is there, and then people see the benefit of it. So I'm willing to take that risk and say, it's not about the next election. Is about the here and now. Well,
what people won't tell you, what politicians won't tell you, is part of why they're going to take a more extreme position and not want to rock the boat is this is where the money is. Coming in with a balanced, common sense, consensus plan means the special interests only get a part of what they want, and they're not cutting you a check for getting a part of what they want. And so our path is one where if we're in office, it's not necessarily going to be the favorite of any, if not most, of the special interests, which means there aren't going to be gigantic checks cut into our bank account. So we might go into a re-election campaign where some extremely well-funded candidate comes and opposes us because they've got their party's backing, they've got special interest backing, and that's sort of that hidden danger of the path that we're proposing. Is it's the right thing for the people, but are the people going to be able to donate enough to hold up to that $10 million or $20 million that some special interest might be willing to put in to knock you out? Probably not.
Yeah, and you're right. When it reminds me of the phrase I've always said when I'm making the decisions or trying to get things passed, is that if nobody's happy, then you're doing the right thing, yes. Right? Yeah. So you're right. When there's special interests and they have one specific box that they want to check, and you're able to get a little bit from everybody, and nobody's happy, but you're doing the right thing because of it. So
yeah. Well, we started this talking about family, and I want to get into what drives us. Obviously, this week, as I'm sure most, if not all, who are watching know that we announced that Abby's pregnant with her second.
Congratulations!
And we released a video. It was fun to tell you. You were awesome.
So I love kids.
And I heard puppies too. So you and my wife.
Yep. Love puppies too.
So I think I joked with you on this, but I might as well share it publicly because I haven't yet. That my wife is one of those who likes dogs and animals more than humans. And it turns out you might be very similar to that.
Absolutely.
So the joke, but we're not actually joking, is that should we be successful, I'd be governor of the people of Illinois. My wife would be first lady of the animals of Illinois. And it sounds like you and her might be very aligned on that.
I might fight her for that role, but
yeah. So here we go. We're going to have actual representation for the animal life in this state, both with my running mate and my wife. Meanwhile, apparently, I'll be stuck dealing with all of you humans. So here we go. But anyways,
I said I'd deal with 3.
Okay, 3. Yeah. So we'll give you the toughest 3. You can have the speaker, the Senate president.
Oh, thank you. Okay, maybe I'll change that number there.
I'll have to figure out who the 3rd one might be. We'll figure that out. But family is obviously extremely important to me, and I don't want to bore people with sharing my story for the 80th time, but it's what's driving me. You kind of got into it briefly, but share your family. I've gotten to meet your family over the course of this, and you have raised some incredible boys. And I just would love to hear a little bit about your family and how proud you are of them.
Yeah, thanks. And a daughter. I have 2 boys and a girl.
Okay, so I've met the boys. Did I meet the girl?
She may have been at one event.
Okay.
Yeah, she's in school now. So
yeah, I don't know that I
think she missed one of the first ones. Yes, yeah. And I think she was at school. So they're 26, 23, and 20. So they are now all full adult category, but they have been with me all along the way. I mean, I've been involved in community service, elected office for 20 some years. So they've always come along, and I've been nothing but open about them and the challenges that comes with parenting, and also navigating through working and dedicating your life to service, and being able, I'm fortunate that my husband is supportive of what I do. We've been married for almost 30 years, so I got to throw that in there, because he too is a part of the children and the raising of them. But I also see they do keep me going in everything. I've experienced so many different things with them, and like I said, I'm an open book on it. As far as struggles with things like anxiety and ADHD and, having introverts and extroverts and, everything. It's amazing how different kids are when you have them. You think they all come from the same 2 people, but they are so different. So just how you adapt to that. And I think it's important for people to understand that everyone experiences that. And, when I've had conversations before to moms in particular, they need to know that it's okay to get to talk to somebody, but they also need to know the importance of taking care of themselves too. So a few years ago, I had kidney cancer during one of my campaigns, and that made you realize like other people hold all this in and all the struggles with family, but everyone's going through all these different things. So we just need to realize that there's help out there, and then you can raise some good kids like we got, but it's not easy. But it takes a village for sure. It takes everybody willing to step up and help out, and take people to soccer practice and when you need to, or watch them when you need a break or whatever. But I'm lucky that I have these amazing adults. But at the same time, they're all living in my house right now, which I was not prepared for as a parent. I know things are different now, and you may prepare differently for your child. But
18, he's out.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, how we thought, right? You think, okay, we'll have them in when they graduate from college, they'll get a job and they'll move to wherever they so choose. But we're not in that world anymore. The majority of the kids at 26, especially the boys, I find, they're at home because and some, not all are, but they just can't afford to, live
what's driven me crazy, joking aside, what has driven me crazy, and I've talked about it, is these attacks on this younger generation, Gen Z now, and obviously moving to Gen Alpha. But, I've seen it from older politicians and political people where they've attacked the younger generation and said, well, when will they grow up and move out and get a job? It's like, guys, you don't understand the economy you've left for our younger generations. You've created this economy that worked quite well for you. And certainly I don't disrespect that fact. But for our younger generations, whether it's millennials like me and my wife or Gen Z, this economy is not working for the younger generations. And this idea that, we would love to have the American dream that we were sold, that we could finish off school, get a job, start our family, buy a house, have our plot of land, and everything just feels hunky-dory. But that's not the world that we're growing up in.
No, and and we were sold that same dream, like that I would have my kids, they'd get a job, they'd be off, they'd, have their own house and their family. And now they're back home, they're living at home. I now have, 3 full-on adults at home and grocery bill to go with it. I don't mind it. I love it, but I just didn't plan for it. So then when, education, we didn't plan for the cost of education is just insane these days. And we didn't realize the impact that would have on what we had originally planned for. And so I think it's both the young generation can't get that, but our generation didn't plan for that either. Yeah. So that's been a challenge all around. So I can't blame them. The jobs aren't there. The paying jobs aren't there. You have these kids go to college and then you tell them they have to go to college. Yeah. So now they're saddled with a tremendous amount of debt in many cases. And then you put them out in an economy where there aren't really jobs for them, where everything is too expensive for them to afford. And then you badger them because they're living at home because they can't afford anything else. Right.
Like, it's no wonder that our younger generations are frustrated and angry and frankly willing to make wholesale changes, and in some cases changes that wouldn't be good. But because they're living in such a broken economic and government system, they're willing to throw it all out. And then the older generations don't understand why our generations feel this way.
Yeah, and they just don't understand, too, how I'd be judged, like, oh, well, your kids are living at home, so so you must have done something wrong along the way. But, no, it's
just the reality. Though.
Yeah, it is. And I realized it when my son said to me, I said something about him having a house, and he goes, Mom, I am never going to own a house. I don't think I'll ever be able to. And I'm like, they don't even have that dream anymore. Yeah. I don't even think it's on the radar of being a homeowner and having, there's dreams that we always just thought would be, that did become realities that just aren't even dreams anymore. Yeah. And it was so sad. I thought, oh my gosh, how did we even crush your dreams, where they don't even exist? So that's just unfortunately.
And we wonder why younger generations explore extreme philosophies like socialism. Like you see I know everyone talks about these young kids and, they're embracing these socialist or communist or whatever ideas. And I don't agree with those positions and have spoken out about where many of them are wrong. But I don't blame the younger generations for exploring those ideas. Simply because, again, when you grow up in such a system that's rigged against your success, are you really going to just sit around and be like, I'm okay with it? Like, you get one life to live. So when the system is rigged against you and your friends and your family, you're going to want to burn down the whole system. And then yet older generations wonder why younger generations are so willing to explore more extreme political philosophies. That's why.
Yeah, because and everyone wants dreams, goals, dreams. I've always told my kids, what are your goals? Go for your goals, set your dreams. But when that's not even a dream anymore, they have to explore a different area. Yep. So that's exactly.
Yeah. Well, and something that as we talk about family, we'll kind of shift into more policies and some of the things that families are facing. One thing that my wife and I that's been important to us is what you said just a little bit ago, the importance of people speaking out, of sharing your story, share your challenges, and your successes too, but share your challenges, share your failures. It's really heartening for people. And my wife and I put out our story this week that, the things that we've been through and where we've struggled personally and together. And I think that's important for people to know that there are people like you out there that have gone through your challenges, that have gone through your struggles. And again, you gave this advice not that long ago on the podcast. And I really want to echo it, that it really is, when you face something, share it, be open about it. We've all had, I'm sure I've had stories of, friends at a veteran who was going through PTSD and nobody knew about it and he took his own life. And it's, you want people to be open about their challenges because you want to be able to help them. But that doesn't happen unless you create a world where they can be vulnerable, where they can share the challenges that they face. And so part of why you and I are so I don't know, even aggressive about sharing our stories and our challenges is for that reason. You've got so many people in Illinois, everyone has their own struggles. And I think because of the era of social media where we all put on a happy face, we miss the challenges and the struggles that people are going through. And you and I genuinely care. And so if we're a little bit too active in sharing our thoughts and our feelings and our struggles and our challenges, that's why, because we want you, our viewers and potential voters, to feel like you can share yours as well.
And if I can add to that too, I feel like that's where we learn. That's and I've seen it too. That's where good policy is written. When people share their story, really good policy and solutions come from the people. They have a challenge, they have a struggle, and then there's got to be a solution for it. And that's really the work that I think that we're about, and I would like to continue to do, because if we don't hear it from the people and we don't hear what's not working and how it's affected their personal life, then you can't do anything about it. So that's where we can really make a difference.
Exactly. And so I've shared our journey on fertility and the struggles to start our family, and where that relates to policy is IVF. We've got this. Here, I'll restart on this. There's a lot of families who struggle with infertility and struggle to talk about it. And it's a extremely isolating experience to go through. And so part of why my wife and I have shared our journey so actively and so repeatedly is because every time we do, we hear from one or two more people where they say, I'm going through that now. Or I heard from one person earlier this week, I'm afraid I'm going to go through that. Can you talk me through it? Because I'm nervous that that's what's likely to happen because I've been through some things. You need people to know that there are other people who've gone through their challenges. I mean, almost 3% of the children born in the U.S. right now are born through IVF. This is not something that just happens every once in a while. 13 million children have been born now because of IVF in the world. So this is, and I think we're seeing with the rise of more health challenges in younger people than ever before, infertility is becoming a bigger problem than maybe it ever has been before. And so we've shared our struggles, we've shared our journey through IVF because we want people to know that it's an option, that it's, something that's available to you to start your family. But we also want people to know that, it's hard. It's not just expensive, it's extremely difficult to go through mentally, physically, especially for the woman. It's in many ways awful. The end result is amazing if it works, but the process is excruciating. And so it just is important for us to know that we're doing whatever we can to help people regardless of the outcome of an election. We have this moment, we have this microphone. Are we using it to help people regardless of whether they vote for us or not? That's something that my wife and I feel really strongly about. And so we're going to talk about IVF, and we're going to talk about it a little more here today, but I'm going to shut up for a second and give you a chance to talk.
No, and I really appreciate you sharing your story because, we're fortunate that we did not have to utilize it, but I have always looked at families and their struggles that they've endured, and it breaks my heart because you're right. Having that little baby in your hand is makes everything you've done to have that baby worth it. And even if they're 26 and kind of a pain in the butt in my house right now, it still makes everything worth it, right?
I like that you specifically said 26. So you outed the one kid.
The one. Well, although the 20-year-old is really the bigger challenge at times, but so I'll call them both out. But yeah, I just admire you for sharing it because it is a heartbreaking journey to watch families go through. So seeing your personal experience and you being able to share that, I think it will help people to not feel as alone, at least in it, and also inspire people to do it because it can result in a positive.
Right. And life is life. Life is precious. Life is amazing. And I don't understand this world here. We'll get a little controversial here, but I don't understand this world where someone can call themselves pro-life or pro-family and be anti-IVF. I would not have my family, my kids, if it was not for IVF. Now, my faith is important to me, and I believe it's a balance. I believe that Teddy is a gift from God. This next child is a miracle, and I give all credit to God for that, but he often uses humans in his work. And Teddy is also a scientific miracle as well, the fact that he's here. Two things can be true at the same time. And frankly, I've seen the polls on this because I owned a polling company for a long time. The vast majority, vast majority, 85% of Americans agree with me. And yet we've got one of our opponents, Darren Bailey, the Republican candidate, who is in that 15%, who's been anti-IVF and has been for years. He's tried to soften his stance in recent years. We'll see if he fully flip-flops on the issue. I'd welcome it because at least finally he'd come to see the light on this issue. But the fact that for years he was somebody who didn't want my family to exist, I don't understand how you can call yourself pro-life or pro-family.
And I don't understand it. And I do, whenever I don't understand something, I do ask people to try to explain their side to it. And I still don't understand this one because, I'm a believer in science as well. I mean, I'm a Catholic, but I also am a believer in science. And I mean, science was used in my child's life too, even though he was a premature baby. I mean, I had one at 32 weeks and, he was revived on a couple occasions.
Sheesh.
So, science intervenes in that. And, I just don't understand utilizing science to help in the creation of life and saving lives. We use it every day, all the time. So I don't understand the argument, and I'm with you on that.
I mean, it's, again, if you celebrate life, then you celebrate life. I mean, I remember I put this in my op-ed in the Tribune back a couple of years ago. I remember vividly talking to a national leader within the Catholic political movement. And she said to me, because she's taken, I mean, she is very, very, very strictly Catholic, and she's taken some very, very conservative positions on things. So I thought she might be one who would feel negatively about how Teddy had come about. And she said, I don't care how your child was born. I just care that he's alive and he's a gift from God and you should celebrate it. I'm paraphrasing because it was years ago.
Yeah.
But the exact wording's in the op-ed. But I mean, that's to me how we should view it, which is, there's a life in Teddy that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for IVF. And to be honest, the stats are there where if you have a successful pregnancy, then it can open you up to the next pregnancy. And so while our second child is also a miracle and a gift from God, it also probably has a little bit to do with the fact that we had the first successful pregnancy through IVF. And so IVF even has a little bit of a hand in what's now going to be the birth of our second child. This is, science and faith can and do coexist. And I don't understand people out there who are so extreme, like our Republican opponents, where they can't live in that world, where they can be so anti-science and unwilling to accept how, the two can complement each other so well. And in this case, end up with life that would not have existed otherwise. Shouldn't that be something we celebrate?
Absolutely. I'm with you 100% on this one.
I mean, and this is, I've said it before, but people by who they surround themselves with. And I've taught people, I'm going to bring something up on here. I'm like, I'll just do it on my phone while I'm talking. But I've taught this to people who work in politics over the years. I've taught it to candidates and even to people who work on like policy shops. I've told them, don't just meet with the candidate or the elected official, talk to their staff. Figure out who's in their inner circle. Because the truth is, how somebody is going to legislate or govern is almost entirely dependent on what their inner circle looks like, what their staff looks like, because most decisions are not made by the principal. They're made by the people that are around them. And so I always look at who somebody surrounds themselves with when it comes to politics. It seems like you agree.
Absolutely. I've always said that exact same thing. I'm not necessarily voting for that person. I'm voting for who they're going to put in their office or their administration with them. That is how I always look at it. And if it's somebody who's just it's about them and, they don't even want to talk about who they put in their administration, then it's definitely, I like people who surround themselves by smarter people. Mm-hmm. And I will admit, I like to have smarter people around me too, to inform me on areas that I don't know about. So, and that's who I would put in. And I would admire people that admit that and would do that. That's what I always look for.
Well, and so because of that, we've got to talk about some of the people that the Republican in this race, Darren Bailey, surrounds himself with, because even while he softens, because guaranteed he's going to come out at some point here, and maybe already has by the time this airs, saying he's pro-IVF and always has been, and the record doesn't back that up, but fine. I only care that he's taking the right position now, even if it is yet another flip-flop. But that doesn't change who he's surrounded himself with. And it's not just that Darren has voted against common sense legislation to expand access to IVF, which he has. It's not that just that he's urged other people to oppose IVF referendums. You look at some of the people that back him and surround him, specifically IFA, David Smith, I brought this up in the live, who've said things like, I mean, Smith and IFI, they attacked President Trump for his stance being pro-IVF, even though anyone else who attacks Trump, they call a rhino, but apparently they were allowed to attack Trump in that. They publicly backed Neil Anderson's bill, which was extreme, which would treat IVF as murder, just like abortion and other things. And these are the people that surround Darren Bailey. And these are individuals who said that IVF diminishes the value of human life, among many, many other things that they've said. And so these are extreme people. And this is Darren Bailey's inner circle. And so even when Bailey softens his approach and claims that he's always been for IVF, you've got to question, you're still surrounding yourself with pretty extreme people. And that should be concerning for especially young families in Illinois, with IVF becoming more and more of a necessity for young families and for even for women into their 40s who are trying to have children. You got to know that one of the major two-party candidates is in an extreme minority on this issue. And that's concerning.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to become, like you said, when you said women are their 40s, I was having that exact thought at that exact time. I mean, families these days are getting started a lot later in life than they used to be. And I think that, but the concept of, that 35-year-old is still under 35 is still the, the considered not high risk or whatever. So the further we get into life and pushing that age, it's only going to be needed even more. Yep. And people should be allowed to. I mean, just because they want to get their life started, like we were talking about, because
in some cases they have to.
I was just going to say, because we're almost forcing it in our society.
I mean, this is the crazy thing. We have created this economy, not we, but older generations created this economy where now young people, especially young women, need to start a career first before they ever could start a family. Some they want to, but for most, they're forced to. They have to in order to make enough money so that they can afford the medical bills to have a child, and then to afford all of the bills that come with raising a child. And so then we look down on these women for getting a career and then having to go make money before they can even think about starting their families. And we say, well, you waited till you were 35 or 38 or 40. And again, we're looking down on them for trying to navigate an economy that they didn't create. I mean, they're living in the world you've created. Maybe stop treating them like crap along the way.
Exactly. Because then, and I think they feel judged.
Yep.
I mean, and we shouldn't be judging anybody for the decisions that they make for their own personal life. Like, it's not fair, and we need to make it easier for people to have families. We need to make it easier for people to raise families and be able to afford to raise families.
Well, and we talk about how each family is unique. I mean, I think one of my big things is strong families. We said this in our intro video: strong families, strong communities. I don't care how you want to construct your family. It's your right, your decision how you want to do that. I believe our society is based on strong family units, however your family might look. And so again, as we look at these people around Darren Bailey, the things he's said in the past, and the things they've said. There was a post that I flagged because it just drove me crazy, because there's a good friend of mine and a supporter of our campaign who he and his husband just had their first child via surrogate. And this baby is amazing, and they're so happy. They're going to raise this kid to be just an incredible human, because they're incredible humans. And then there's a conservative commentator who I know from early on, my early days, by the name of Guy Benson, who he and his husband just had their second child via surrogate. And again, these same people who are around Darren Bailey, one of them posted something about this and said, this child's being denied a mother and how utterly selfish. This is going to haunt his children for life. I'm not going to say all of the ridiculous things that are in this post, but that's the approach that they're taking. And again, a human has been brought into this world, into a loving family. You may not like how that family looks, and whatever, we could fight that another day, I guess. But a human life, you claim to be pro-life. A human life exists now that would not have existed otherwise. Shouldn't we be celebrating that?
And I didn't even think about that end of it on the IVF, but it is so true. I mean, if you have a loving family, and I know DCFS is your passion, and yet to deny a loving family having a child in their home and raising that child with nothing but love and care, and yet on the flip side of it, you have issues that occur in households and DCFS gets involved, and you have those situations where you can put the two together, or you can, just have responsible people who want to raise their children and let them be happy about it. I didn't even think about that side of it, but it's so true.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, if you're pro-life, then you've got to actually be pro-life. And I'm just sick of the hypocrisy. It's one of the many reasons why I left a certain political party, because I just can't take the hypocrisy. Now, the other side is hypocritical in their own way. So I'm not saying this is just one party's problem, but especially on life and family, if you're going to be pro-family, then be pro-family. I don't know why that's such a hard thing to ask. But you brought up DCFS. Let's shift over to that, because certainly that's a passion for both of us, but especially me. You've got a extremely difficult problem here. I don't want it to diminish just how challenging this is. But the problem is it's not being addressed because we have a governor who politics always comes first. And for JB Pritzker, because he wants to run for president, he can't have not us, like the public or the media, talking about DCFS, because that will put it around his neck when he runs for president. And we mentioned this earlier in the podcast. One of the values of you and I running and us being independents, and neither of us having ambitions, is, maybe we will be a one term, but what I can guarantee you is we're not doing this as a stepping stone for something else. This isn't, we're doing this so you can then go run for U.S. Senate like Juliana Stratton. This isn't, I'm doing this so I can go run for president, because honestly, I genuinely don't want that job. It is a lose-lose scenario, have no interest. And so we're going to go in doing the thing that needs to be done in the moment. DCFS needs to be addressed, and you can't try to brush it under the rug simply because you don't want to wear that in your future political ambitions. Like, these are kids. And we've seen this over and over out of this governor, whether it's DCFS, Department of Corrections, which we'll talk about soon, or even the situation that I brought up recently where there was a shooting in East St. Louis and an unarmed mother of three, a black woman, was shot in her car. And now she was doing a lot of things she shouldn't have. I'm not going to pretend like she didn't have some faults in this herself, but JB Pritzker tried to sweep that under the rug because he can't be the candidate for governor in a Democratic primary who had an unarmed black woman shot by a white police officer. And so as a result, he has desperately tried to keep the media and everyone else from talking about this. We should be talking about the problems in our state, not shooing them under the rug because they might cause us political problems in the future. And DCFS is at the heart of that.
Well, and I will admit, DCFS or child welfare, however you want to refer to it across the country, is an issue in a lot of states. And I was at a national conference for mental health, and one of the individuals that was there was explaining how they were rehabbing, I think it was actually in Missouri, that they were hired. They brought in an independent consulting firm to reevaluate. Anyways, their numbers are significantly improved, but this was done legislatively. It was that the legislature actually talked about the issues. Yep. They realized there was a problem that they really needed to solve, and they did something about it. And that is the problem, is we're not seeing that movement on it of actually having structural changes within the organization. Yep. And if it involves bringing somebody else in that's done it somewhere else, then that's what we need to do. If it involves, looking to other states to see what they've done, because others are talking about it. Not everybody, and it's not everywhere, but it's not isolated here, and there are solutions out there that we should be looking to.
Yeah, and that's where I've tried to be fair, that these are challenges around the country. I don't blame the challenges with child welfare on JB Pritzker. What I do blame him for is that he's not putting the attention or the focus on trying to solve those problems. If he was actively trying to solve this, and by the way, I've proven this. I have said positive things about JB in the areas in which he's clearly making an effort. And of course, I've had the Bailey bots say, see, proof, you're on JB's payroll. But when things are being done, when you're putting in the effort, ask my team at the companies that I've started, at the teams that I've put together. My rule is try. If you're trying and failing, I will never get on you. I will have your back. Yeah, we'll talk about how the failure happened so we can learn from it, but I will not get on you for trying and failing. Where I will get on you is not trying. And that is my beef with Pritzker, genuinely. If he was putting in the effort here, but we were still hearing stories about young people dying or being mistreated or whatever the other challenges are within DCFS, and families being torn apart when maybe they shouldn't have, that happens everywhere. But it does happen more in Illinois than it should, to be clear. But the baseline is that's a human problem. So I would not be getting on JB if that was the case. It's the fact that the effort isn't being put in, the fact that the focus is not being put on this. That's where I've got a beef. He did his J beef one time, so I like to make fun of him for that. I've got a J beef with Pritzker on this where, okay, they say we put a few more bucks in it. And yeah, we brought in somebody new to run the department and they claim it's better, but because they're not transparent, we don't know. They are not reporting the details, so we have no idea. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? There's no transparency here. There's no collaboration. And I know for a fact that there are a number of lawmakers who would like to be at the table helping resolve this issue, helping do something about this. And the governor's office has no interest. So help is being offered and not being taken. So then, you know what, Governor, you own. So I'm going to come after you for this. And yeah, for those people who want to say, oh, that's not fair, the governor decided this is how he wanted it. He decided he wasn't going to accept help from anybody else. He wasn't going to talk about it publicly, that it was just going to be, his team that takes care of it. Then fine, then you better own this. And I don't even see that level of the governor stepping up and saying, I'm the governor, I own this, and we're working on it.
And I want to just add to that, when you say about the transparency piece, when there's no transparency, there's no trust. And so really, in this case, I don't think anyone's trusting that there's work that's being done. Yeah. And what I don't want to see is I don't want to see another task force or another report done and nothing actually being done with it. So that's, and I don't think we've seen either. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen the solution there. We haven't seen the action, and there hasn't been the transparency of what's being done. So therefore, there's not the trust.
And I know you and I have been talking about this a lot. We've been talking with other experts. We're going to be rolling out our plan for how to fix this. That will be coming soon. So if you wonder why we're talking just about the problem on this one and not the solution, it's because we are actively working on an in-depth solution on this with some things I'm frankly pretty excited about. So we will be talking about this soon because there are solutions out there and there are things that other states have done that Illinois ought to be looking at. And we're going to be talking about that in depth very soon. So probably a good place to end the DCFS conversation.
Sounds good.
Let's talk about safety, because on this week's Live from the Lincoln Desk, we had somebody who brought up a question that I hadn't really connected to families. This is family week for us. And yes, safety is a family thing, but they brought up flock cameras specifically within safety. And you've got... it's always so interesting how, and my producer even brought it up afterwards, like, I never even thought of it from that angle, and I hadn't either, that when we think about some of these issues, it's not just, ALPR cameras and how they help keep communities safe, but those are also tools that are used to help identify when there are missing children, when there are children who have been victims of course, trafficking. Yeah, thank you. It's once the camera starts rolling, you lose a word, and then there you go. But you've got human trafficking victims who are children, and those ALPRs help find those children. And so you've got, yet again, the Republican candidate just ban flock cameras. It sounds good. It gets a lot of likes, but there's no conversation about what's the downside to that? What's the price then that you pay? I don't want to live in a surveillance state. We all do, unfortunately, and something needs to be done about it. So that's a whole conversation we need to have about how we keep people's privacy and respect it, because that's not being done today. But are you going to, along the way, eliminate tools that are currently being used to keep families and communities safe and to keep children safe? That to me seems like a very, very, very short-sighted solution to a real problem, which is what we often get from the Bailey camp, so that's not surprising. But if we're going to talk about family, we have to talk about safety. Yeah,
and you're right. And I was really concerned when I read that too, that there was just going to be an outright ban. I know they're controversial. Yeah. Up in Woodstock, there was, they implemented them, their city council, and it's a local government. I mean, I think we're both, local government supporters, so decisions that they need to make. But it was controversial for that reason, and their meetings were long, and it was not really, it wasn't hugely supported throughout the community. But and there is that debate of keeping people safe, because I will say my daughter was doing work at one of the places that were located up there, and the students there presented a problem to the city council, and their problem was they didn't feel safe in that area. And so this was a viable solution to the problem of children being able to feel safe. And then there was the debate over, the other areas, what are you going to use their information for? And I don't know the solution, but an outright ban is not it. I think what they ended up is you can limit.
Well, and that's the key. There's a quote that a lot of people post related to cameras and other things that I'm going to butcher, but those who are willing to give up freedom for safety will have neither. And I think I paraphrased that a bit, but I actually do believe there's something to that we've got to make sure we're not taking away people's freedoms and their privacy in order to achieve a small amount of safety. But this is where the extreme solution, you don't have to bounce between one extreme than the other. Policy, more often than not, the solution is in the middle between the extremes. And this is yet another situation where we're not saying cameras everywhere, and we're not saying what Bailey says, which is no cameras anywhere. There's a vast middle ground where you can make sure you're putting requirements and structures and guardrails and protections in place where we're not all being surveilled 24/7, where we're not, this stuff isn't being stored, that our history isn't being put somewhere that could be hacked and stolen. There are so many things we can do to make sure that the cameras are only used when they absolutely need to be used in situations for safety, in situations we could all agree that, a child is missing, a child is endangered. We know who took them. We know their license plate. I'd like to make sure there's cameras out there to find that individual as fast as possible. We all agree with that. So, but that's the middle ground of take the time, sit down and find the solution. And you and I are willing to put in that work, to sit down and get experts around the table and listen to them and hear them out and go back and forth and have a solution be draft 8 because you didn't get it right the first time. Like that's how legislating, that's how governing is supposed to work. We live in this instant gratification society where it's just, nope, here's my solution, pass it or don't, or ban it, that's it. And that's just, you can't govern that way.
No, and it's been like that now in the recent, probably past at least 5 years or so, probably even more, that it's really become that. Mm-hmm. And there's no good legislation that is being passed. And then you have all this, counter legislation. You have opposites, and then you have trailer bills because they messed it up the first time. Yep. So now it's like, oops, we made a mistake. Well, I could have told you we were going to make a mistake. And you just said, well, you got to pass it, right? Yep. And then we'll know what mistakes we actually made. So
what's the old Pelosi? We got to pass it so we can figure out what's in it.
Yeah. Exactly. And we've gotten more into that than we have away from that.
Yeah. And the Safety Act is a great example of that, where you had something that was passed that I know Republicans and Bailey like to vilify. To be clear, moving away from cash bail is a good thing, and I'm going to state that on the record. I have stated it before, but just because we're talking about the Safety Act here, I don't want somebody to take my comments the wrong way. But the process of the Safety Act was bad, where they didn't bring everybody around the table. Law enforcement, state's attorneys, judges, none of them were at the table when that package of legislation was negotiated. And so you did see a number of things where there were trailer bills that had to be pushed forward to fix some of the problems. Not all the problems have been fixed yet. And of course, there's this reticence from the people who sponsored the bill. They don't ever really want to touch it, even though there are some things we need to fix in it. And some people like me and like you who are in this for the right reasons are saying, hey, we don't want to open up the Safety Act again because we want to do away with it like some of these people who are more extreme. We're just saying there are some problems with it. Let's sit down. Let's solve it. It wasn't done the way it should have been at the start. So let's sit down and let's make sure we do have things written the right way, because right now we understand the goals of the legislation, but there are situations where we saw it in DuPage County and in McHenry County recently. In McHenry County, there was an individual who had been caught, I think it was like almost 100 times or something. It was an astronomical number of times who they were caught shoplifting, and the state's attorney couldn't hold them. The judge couldn't hold them because it was not a detainable offense under the Safety Act. When this was clear, this person, I think, basically told them during the process, you let me out, I'm going to go steal again. Okay, probably a situation where we should say, okay, maybe let's just keep them detained then. But there wasn't the option for that. You saw in DuPage County, there was an individual, the state's attorney there brought this up, where there was an individual who was caught in their third DUI. It was reckless, and they had their young child in the car in the back seat at the time. And this was someone who clearly had a history of endangering others, driving under the influence, and the state's attorney couldn't argue for detention for this individual, even even though they were clearly a danger to their young child. Like, there are situations where we do need a little bit more judicial discretion. And so, yes, let's sit down and let's negotiate and make sure that bill is correct. But you have the one extreme that says, nope, we're never going to change it. And then the other extreme, like Bailey, that says, just repeal it. And then there's well-meaning people like you and I in the middle who said, why don't we just sit down and make it the best possible piece of legislation it can be? Why is that so controversial?
Well, and I think especially with that, understanding how the different branches of government work together. On that one, you had the judicial branch and you had the legislative branch basically dictating to the judicial branch of how they need to operate. And then there becomes this conflict of like, well, it just doesn't make sense. Not having those conversations gets you exactly where we're at today. And then there is kind of still that tension that exists where if everyone is at the table and you can understand both sides and how they operate and where their authority to lies, then you can get it right the first time.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think you and I are aligned that we've got to keep people safe, but there's a balance here between it. And it isn't just about, like, I've had some people in my social media say that I'm pro-criminal because I happen to care what's happening at the Department of Corrections, that I believe that inmates, regardless of their crimes, ought to be treated like humans because they are humans. And there's a whole bunch of people now in social media who are, basically saying, oh, see, we knew you were a far leftist because you happen to care about, it's like, all you care about is the criminals. I'm like, no, I've got a pretty long history of supporting law enforcement. I have elected dozens of sheriffs and state's attorneys. I've got a pretty solid history on keeping communities safe and holding criminals accountable. But that doesn't mean that you don't also make sure that they are in environments that support their rehabilitation, that they are in environments where we're helping them so that when they are done serving their sentence, they can be contributing members of society instead of a repeat offender. I mean, people don't understand that there are people who have committed crimes because either they didn't feel like they had an alternative or because they didn't know any better. The amount of life skills that are missing from people who are currently in our jails and our prisons, some of the best things you can do for them are teach them how to manage a budget, how to get a job, how to take care of themselves and their family members, and how to get an apartment and take care of that apartment. I mean, we stopped teaching home ec in schools a long time ago. And if you walk through a prison and have conversations with some of these inmates, those are skills they're missing. And so then, they might end up reoffending because maybe they don't have an alternative. So if you want our community safe, then you should want rehabilitation because then you're going to have fewer criminals. And yet you get those people on the right who throw them away or lock them up and throw away the key. And it's like, but that's not going to achieve the end result that you're looking for. If you truly want safe communities, then you have got to do both things.
Well, and I always look at, sometimes when people don't understand it from that perspective, I like to put it into numbers because sometimes people are so set these days, especially, and what does it mean to me? Like, what is the dollar amount to me? And the cost to the state is significantly higher to have somebody remain incarcerated than it would be to teach them those skills, to get them back into the community, be a productive member of society. And those dollars and cents actually matter too to some individuals. I mean, and to the individual that is life's being affected. So there's so many reasons beyond that. Everything ties together. And even going back to DCFS, it's the same thing there. If we actually teach people how to parent properly, and we keep kids in their homes that actually have loving parents, and it's saving the state. And I just came across it today, and it wasn't in our state, but it was like for every 1,000 children that remain in foster care, it was like $25 million to this state or something. And I'm not saying we shouldn't put that money to that, but if we can actually take money and put it into resources that can provide safe communities, provide individuals with, responsible and respectable lives that they want to then be participating members of society, then everybody wins.
So you're saying the more fiscally responsible position is to rehabilitate offenders, invest in our families. This is something I've been saying for a long time, and I said it when I was a member of the Republican Party, and they clearly didn't agree, which is maybe one of the many reasons why they didn't want me anymore. But this idea of being fiscally responsible, if all you care about is taxes and the fiscal impact, then you should be agreeing with us,
right?
Because this will save you money.
Yes, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's common sense.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about the importance of protecting families. That brought us to safety, that brought us to rehabilitating offenders. So let's talk about the Department of Corrections. It's been in the news a lot recently. I've brought it up a number of times recently because something that isn't talked about enough are the failures within the Department of Corrections under JB Pritzker. And for me, this is a administrative failure of our governor, but that's not the topic of the week. So I'll save that for a future week. But really the impact this has on humans, and people forget that those offenders have spouses, they have children, they have parents, they have family members. And so when we talk about families, that does also include our incarcerated family members. We should care about them as well. We should also care about the staff members, the correctional staff at these facilities who frankly are being put in extremely unsafe and in some cases unhealthy situations. These are people's husbands and wives, parents who are being put in those situations, all because of the failures of JB Pritzker's Department of Corrections. And so we absolutely must be talking about IDOC. I've talked in recent weeks. There's a correctional facility in Illinois that has been on lockdown for several weeks where their staff has been picketing because they don't have working radios. Ask anybody who has dealt with these facilities how necessary radios are for the safety of the workers, even the safety of the inmates. I have brought up for years the fact that Illinois' number of lockdowns for administrative reasons has been skyrocketing over the last 4 or 5 years under JB Pritzker, mostly because of insufficient staffing levels. We're about a quarter understaffed in security positions, which are the most important positions. And so as a result, you have correctional facilities on lockdown 24/7. There's one correctional facility that was on lockdown 24/7 for months at a time. And lockdown means solitary confinement. It means you do not leave your cell. And for those of you who maybe don't care about criminals, I think you're heartless, but fine. Even still, when you lock a criminal, especially in some of these high maximum security facilities, so these are violent criminals, and you lock them in their cells for days or months at a time, you don't think they're going to respond violently? So even if you don't care about the criminal himself or herself, you certainly care about the correctional staff who's going to have to deal with now an even more violent inmate because they've been locked in their cell for months at a time. And these are the things we see happening in JB Pritzker's Department of Corrections. We see abuse that's going unnoticed, unrepresented, or unreported. You see now we've got women, we've got children who are suing the state of Illinois because they were sexually abused while they were in prison. The problems are ridiculous and disgusting, and there's so much work that needs to be done cleaning up our Department of Corrections. And again, it's yet another topic that Pritzker sweeps under the rug and refuses to talk about.
Well, and I want to just do a little side note here. So I mentioned to you about this Amerigo, which is this PBS show. And one of the things that I learned from that is we as a society in America have lost our sense of community. And I feel like once we've lost that sense of community, we've really lost the sense of responsibility as a community. And they had someone on there that was from Ireland. And it kind of
my home country.
Yeah. And it was really enlightening that when there's failures like this, instead of blaming just the individuals that are incarcerated, well, they shouldn't have committed a crime or they shouldn't have done that. Like the community actually looks at it as their responsibility of like, where did we fail or how do we need to pick it up the failures there? So I think that's the problem of what we've lost is us as a community have really lost our sense of responsibility to all those within that community. And once we take ownership of that again and we humanize all of the individuals that are within that community, I think that we can try to find those solutions and really work towards that because instead of just putting somebody off or putting them in confinement and not thinking about the effects on that person and then them as a contributing member of society and a part of that community, we've just lost our responsibility. So I think the approach we're taking, it really hit home to me is that we need to see how can we make that difference and what can we do to be responsible for that. And I think it's bringing everyone back to community. And if we're talking about Department of Corrections, if I can take another sidebar,
go for it.
Like my daughter does forensic psychology, and she was in London, and she did about, she worked in their prison system there, and they look at things very differently in different countries, and it kind of goes to the Ireland. Well, why aren't we looking to these other countries of what they're doing? And there they had one of the best restaurants in London is actually within their prison system, and it's called the Clink, and
That's amazing.
and I've been trying and having conversations.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's like a 5-star restaurant, and it's a sidebar, but everyone that cooks, that serves you, that does everything within it are inmates in the prison.
So similar to DuPage County has they're at the college there. They've got the restaurant that's run by aspiring culinary like chefs and everyone else.
Exactly.
That's a cool idea.
It is, and it's actually like you have to leave your cell phone at the door. You have to do everything you would do as if you were visiting someone there, and like so no cameras, no nothing. But you get served this wonderful meal, and it trains those individuals, and they have to be within
That's really cool.
2 years of release, and it's something like 80% of them are employed by the time they leave or upon release. So it's like that community took responsibility and they stepped up, and we're not doing that here.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
I've been trying to get it going here. I've had conversations at multiple levels. They've kind of died down lately, but I was really passionate
you might
about
soon
doing
be in a
that.
position to actually make it happen.
They have a whole plan. They have it planned out. So if anyone wants to do it,
that is
I'm
really
on
cool.
it. I'm on it.
We've throughout the course of this week, we've talked about a lot of the challenges facing families. We've had long conversations about property taxes and costs for families. And one of the things that we haven't talked about that's niche here, but it's somewhere where you have a lot of expertise. So before we close this down, I want to give you a chance to talk about it. It's transportation. We have people spend a significant amount of time going to and from work. That's time that they don't get to spend with their families. We have, challenges with economic development because we don't have the infrastructure built up, which means no good paying jobs for people who want to raise their families and take care of their families. Transportation is a family issue, but it isn't often brought up within this sphere, this lens. I'd love to hear from you on what we can be doing better in Illinois on transportation, because I think you and I have made this a bit of a priority. We've talked about this in the past, but not through this lens. So it's an open floor here, but take it the direction you want.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring it up from the standpoint of, you said something earlier, well, when we were talking about evolving. I mean, this is one area that we have not evolved.
Yep.
And I was just at an event like a month ago, and it was a presentation on the evolution of the vehicle. And it talked about how, when it was started in the, 1900s, there was one source of fuel, and motor fuel tax evolved from that one source of fuel. That's how they solved how they repair their roads.
Yep.
Then it was a usage fee.
Yep.
And now I forget the numbers, and I'm going to not do a great job, but it's something like there's 13 or 20 different fuel sources available now for vehicles. Yet we have one way of taxing them, one user fee, which is motor fuel tax.
Yep.
So that, I won't get into detail on our solution right now, but that's just, it puts into perspective of how our government has not evolved in the area of transportation.
Yep.
And, in just in infrastructure in general, not just transportation. And it is related to family in that everybody needs water, everybody needs their lights on, everybody needs a road to get where they're going, or some form of transportation or transit to get there. And we just haven't evolved in that. And so we really need to take a look at those sources and how we're able to maintain the systems we have with the way that we continue.
Well, just thinking towards the future too. I mean, I ranted about this a little bit on my live this week. You probably saw and heard me do it, and maybe braced for a second. What's he going to say? But we're not thinking, how are we going to be transporting ourselves and our goods in the very near future? I mean, we are on the precipice of massive changes in the world, changes that we can't control in Illinois. I mean, these are global changes in terms of how people travel, how we transport goods, how the technologies that are utilized. And we're not even thinking about that. I mean, I brought up the transit bill, and now we had to basically bail out CTA with a whole bunch of suburban money. And yes, a little bit of that went to Pace and Metro, but let's be real, a very, very tiny amount went to Pace and Metro. Most of it was for CTA. And it's still of this old mentality of how do we move people from one spot to the other. not recognizing that post-COVID transportation needs have significantly shifted. And now as we move into driverless vehicles and drones and all these different things that are going to be taking over the way that we transport and deliver humans and things, we're still focused on how do we build, that next 4-lane, 8-lane highway, or how do we resurface that road that maybe we won't even be using in the near future. And I'm a huge supporter of our road builders. I've worked with 150 over the years. I'm sure they're going to stick with the governor in this race, and that's fine. But they'll have allies in us if we were to win. But we also are going to be thinking, guys, what's this world look like? Because if you don't think about the future, you're going to be the one sitting there looking over the edge going, oh, wait, we weren't prepared for this. While other states that actually thought ahead were prepared for, okay, then what does our road building look like? What should it look like 10, 20 years from now? These are the things we need to be thinking about. But because we careen from budget to budget and just desperately try to make it through the fiscal year, we're not even thinking about next year, let alone 10 years down the line.
And I think people don't want to hear it either because people are worried about exactly right now.
Yep.
To think that bigger picture and actually start solving the problems for that future are hard for people to really understand or comprehend sometimes. And it's hard to get that support. But this is exactly what we're rooted in,
Yep.
is being creative, being thoughtful,
Yep.
and being able to take those risks in those larger picture items. And part of the transportation one, too, that was very enlightening is it's not just our problem. And a lot of times when it's talked about, especially in this race, it's like it's a Chicago problem or it's a suburban problem. And it's not. This is where the entire state needs to get involved with the conversation. And even beyond the entire state of Illinois, I mean, really, transportation is regional. It's, beyond it. There's parts of the country that are working with multi-state areas and regions in order to solve these problems. Mm-hmm. And it goes to those levels of efficiencies, planning, working together really ends up maximizing opportunities. And we haven't done that because we do live in this little silo, even up here in the Chicago region. We're not even including the whole state in that conversation.
Well, you saw that in the transit bill. You saw that they yanked away money from the road fund from downstate. And it just seems like, as much as I get frustrated being a suburban resident with how much the suburbs are the piggy bank for Chicago and the rest of the state, I very much understand from my downstate friends. And that's the official term, even though it's going from the Wisconsin border in Northwest Illinois to actual downstate. But whatever, we're supposed to just call it all downstate. Sorry, rant over. Anyways, I understand that my downstate friends are very frustrated because this happens over and over. And we just saw it happen a year ago under JB Pritzker, where funding was yanked from the rest of the state in order to, again, support this CTA bailout for Brandon Johnson's transit agency. And so it's no wonder why they're frustrated. And as you said, we've got to think about transit as a much larger entity than just a political thing, because that's what that became. It became bailing out Chicago yet again, instead of it becoming what should transit look like in Illinois in the 21st century, which, by the way, we are a quarter of the way through, but in the 21st century, what should our transit look like? Those aren't the conversations that end up happening.
No, and we're always looking back. We're always looking back on how do we fix what's broken now? We're not looking forward on how do we make it better for, generations to come. And I feel like we're always just in this reactive mode. And transportation and transit are really an example of that. And if you look to, if you've ever heard a futurist speak, I mean, it's really fascinating how they take data and trends and then they project. I mean, it's really cool to see, but I don't see anyone really looking to those individuals that are actually basing what it's going to look like in the future on things that have occurred historically and using that information to actually guide the legislation and policy. But they're pretty close to being right on with their projections, at least heading you in the right direction rather than be reactive to the mistakes that we've made in the past, actually looking to the future and how we can improve things going forward.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, a good example of that is I got several clients and friends who are on both sides of the Route 53 debate, where Route 53 basically stops, basically in my backyard is where it basically stops. It was supposed to continue all the way up through Lake County, and it was a fight for decades on was that built. And one of our good supporters and a friend of mine was one of the leaders against that, and one of our clients who has since passed away was one of the leaders for it. So we watched this whole thing go down. down. And what's amazing is the guy who was against it's not going to love when I say this, but back then I did lean more towards 53 was needed, because back then I do think it was for the whole county. It was more needed than not, but it was very close. And I understand why the communities that were right along that didn't want it. But now looking back, I think they made the right choice not building 53, because again, now that we have this interconnected world and fewer people are having to drive to work, they're able to connect remotely. You've got Lake County that you've seen some of what makes Lake County special being preserved by not having big highways running through it and tons of traffic going through it. I mean, Lake County is a unique county where it's both suburban, but also has that green footprint and their forest preserves. And there really are very few places around that look and feel like Lake County, Illinois. And now thinking about it, I'm glad that this guy was successful, because I think it was the right call. We couldn't have predicted back then that COVID was going to hit, but this is how things change so much over time. And it's why you have to think about not just what do we think it should look like right now based on what we know has happened over the last 20 years. You've got to actually think about the future, and not to be ageist here, but when you've got somebody who's, in my case, I'm 40 years old, I'm younger, I'm a millennial, it's how I naturally think is about the future, going up against two more old school and older individuals in their 60s. Do you really think that they're going to be the ones who are going to think to the future on what's the solution for our kids and our grandkids? I've given Pritzker credit in quantum. It's the one place that he has done that, where he's thought big, even though that was his slogan, was to think big. So I will give credit where it's due, but on everything else, it's very reactionary. It's very solve the problems of 10 years ago, and run a government that's still run on pen and paper, that still can't do things that our phones could do automated right now, and yet government in Illinois can't handle those things. Like, those are the areas where we've got to catch it up, and I think we are naturally situated based on your policy expertise and recently having raised your young family, and now they're still decently young, and my currently young family that is starting to grow. We are uniquely positioned here to be able to lead Illinois into what is a very uncertain and, for many people, very scary future.
And I agree. And I think that when we talked about the science, this is absolutely an area where we need to embrace it. I mean, technology is here, and it's only going to get more integrated into our everyday lives. And I don't feel like that has been incorporated as much as it should be into not only just our policy, but in our governing. Like you said, I mean, going on paper versus, it is a technology-driven world, and we need to accept that, because it is not going back from there, and we need to embrace it and figure out how we can actually utilize it to improve our lives rather than just bring us down at times.
Illinois is the MySpace of governments at this point, and maybe it's time to get with the new technology.
Exactly. We need to be the inventor of what's next versus living in...
So I usually like to end this on how, I did this with Lou, on how does our independent movement make a lot of this possible. But honestly, I think we've kind of fit that in as we've gone along. So I'm going to change it up really and end instead on anything else when it comes to families that are topics that you haven't heard covered, things, or maybe just things that I've talked about prior to this podcast that you haven't had a chance to talk about, things that really matter to you, issues that you say, we need to do X to lower costs for working families or take care of working families. As my running mate, you pick. I'm giving this to you on the spot.
And I have to, just because it's so personal to me, I will pick something we didn't talk about, but relates to family, and that's mental health. And I have to do it because I'm the president of the McHenry County Mental Health Board, and it is something, and next year there's actually going to be legislation that had already passed that that the school systems are going to have to evaluate every year the students on mental health. I'm not sure if I'm sold on that legislation.
It's a little bit of a top-down mandate.
I would rather have been an opt-in than opt-out on it, and for the schools. I
love the resource being available.
Yes,
but opt-in versus opt-out is a huge difference, I think, of where we stand compared to that bill that was passed. Yes, and for many, many, many reasons, and even being on the mental health board. I mean, the strain it's going to put on so many different individuals. Well, you talk about unfunded mandates on schools.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are not enough people who can do this.
Our
that's not being talked about. Like, there are not enough enough people within our schools who can fulfill that responsibility, which means the cost for school districts is going to be astronomical because they're going to be fighting for what few are out there that they can hire.
Well, that's not even what they're going to do on this. They're going to put the teachers in charge of this.
You think?
So I think a lot are. They're going to have to be.
Yet another thing our teachers are going to have to do that isn't teaching kids?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm concerned from so many different areas. I'm concerned from, the teachers, the parents, the kids, I mean, all around. There are so many concerns with that. But the reason I bring up mental health is because our kids are so taxed just mentally these days that there are so many.
You mean it's not like the older generation where they just say we're a bunch of snowflakes? There actually are more challenges for young people than there ever were?
Well, and my husband and I have this discussion all the time because of the fact that, back when you didn't have all these computers and cell phones in your hand 24/7, I mean, the brain can only handle so much information. And when now it's in your hand 24/7 to get constant information.
And remember when you were a kid, how much you wanted to know what people thought about you? Like, that's just human. That's natural. But the good thing for us growing up, I mean, I did have some social media. We mostly used chat. The old AOL chat and the different chats we had. I think I had like 4 open at a time when I was a kid, and that was the cool thing. But like now I think about kids growing up. It's like you naturally want to know what people are saying, what they're thinking about you. You want to be in the know the next day you go to school. So there are these human reasons why kids are going to want to be plugged in the know and on social media 24/7. And we don't think that's going to have a mental impact on these young people.
Right. So absolutely. That's why I bring it up is there are challenges that we have today that we couldn't relate to then. And we had a lot of challenges back then. I mean, the good news is we're having the conversations, which is great. But we also need to work towards, solid solution and going back to the whole support systems within there. So I think that's just a conversation we need to continue as far as the impact of that social media and on our family's mental health, not just the children, but the entirety of the whole family unit.
Well, you serve on the mental health board, and I've talked about before something that I have been proud to support is the creation of mental health boards throughout the suburbs. Talk about that for a second, because it seems to be misunderstood, and we seem to be having, in some of these suburban communities especially, these very political fights where either the board, in the creation of the board or after the board is created, the politics continue and you still aren't getting the funding to mental health services like you're supposed to or like is needed. For those who don't know what's going on here, as somebody who's on the inside, share some of that.
Yeah, and I have to say that, the one thing that gets lost is why is mental health and wellness controversial to begin with, and it should never become partisan in nature. Goes back to that community. We should be supporting the needs of our community. And I'm on the second oldest mental health board in the state and one of the largest mental health boards. So there is significant value in investing in your community and investing in the mental wellness for those within the community. So why it becomes a controversial topic, it kind of blows my mind because you kind of lose sight of the purpose of it to begin with. And we're driven by, there is a Community Mental Health Act, which drives all these. I'm on a 708 board. There's varied types of boards, but 708 is one of the more popular ones that are utilized. I think it just goes to show where we are in our political climate. And it's exactly the reason why we're doing what we're doing, because this partisan extreme political divide has infiltrated every level of our government. Yep. And when it's coming down to mental health boards, it's just such a sad thing to see because those are many of the times that those are the most vulnerable individuals within our communities that just need help. And to not be able to allocate those funds to those that need help is just really devastating.
Well, and this to me, we talk about some of the failures we see left of center or right of center. We've obviously dealt with right of center a lot previously in our lives. And you heard when there'd be like a school shooting or something, just a absolutely horrible situation, you would hear many conservatives say, well, it's not the guns, it's mental health. And so then we would say, okay, well then can we do something about mental health? And then they come in and say, well, no, we're not going to do that either. It's like, well, then you got to pick a lane here. Like I will say that as somebody who my heart gets just torn into shreds every time that there's a school shooting. With all the work we've done with schools and now having my little boy, we need to be doing something instead of just saying, oh, well, thoughts and prayers. And investing in mental health to me seems like a common sense thing. And in fact, some of the best conservatives and religious people that I know, even out towards McHenry County, have been some of the biggest advocates for mental health boards and investments in mental health and nonprofits and community organizations. So this is not a conservative versus liberal thing or red versus blue thing. It's a human thing, and we do need to be recognizing how fragile the human mind can be. I mean, I learned this during COVID. Some of the people that I thought were the strongest people that I knew during COVID, you just watched as their mental health deteriorated. And now some of them have recovered, and some of them I look and they're not the same person they were back in 2018, or they're a completely different person. I mean, we have to recognize that mental health is health. And we've got to invest in it, especially with such an isolated world that we live in right now, where post-COVID, we don't socialize like we used to and like we should. Mental health is even more of a challenge. And so if we're not going to take that seriously moving forward, then we're going to continue to pay the price, which the price then of not investing in mental health, not caring about mental health from a fiscal standpoint gets way more expensive on the back end when you try to clean up the results instead of solving the root cause.
Exactly what I was about to say too. It's that, investing in that proactive versus being reactive is really what we need to start doing. And in the acceptance, we're getting there, but I don't think we're at that point where, everyone's looking at the proactive standpoint of it. And it's because of that transition from, using only 12 hours of our brain, using 24 hours and filling it with so much information, like from around the world, where we used to just get what was going on in our neighborhood or maybe our state through our local TV. But now the brain, we don't know enough about our brains in order to understand that, but we need to continue to try and support those that are struggling with that and really change the conversation. You mentioned it to mental wellness. I mean, it needs to be part of we work out. Well, we need to take care of our brains like we would take care of our bodies. So nobody really knows how to do that quite yet, but we need to start thinking and being proactive on that.
Yep. Well, I think it's a really good place to stop. So well done. Good choice. I'm really excited that you all got a chance to get to know Carolyn a little bit better. I hope based on this, you've got a pretty good idea why I wanted to do this journey with Carolyn. So thanks for being here. But more importantly, thank you. I guess I should thank your family for letting you run with me and do this. There's a lot of stress that comes with this. And when you run as an independent, you take the arrows, not just from one side, but from two sides. And so it really is extra difficult to do what we are doing. So thank you for being willing to do that. And thank you to your family for being a support system around you. I'm really excited about the changes and the improvements we can make in Illinois. And we're going to go do it together. So thank you.
Yeah, no, and I just want to say, thank you so much for that too. And although we're taking the arrows on both sides, I will say this has been really fun because you see the best in people a lot of times in the political world. And this time around, I've seen the best, of people far more than I've seen the worst. So what we're doing, I know, is the right thing, and I'll continue fighting for it.
All right, maybe we should trade social media platforms for a day or two so you could...
I read it, I just ignore it.
Talking about how you see the best in people, though I have seen good in people too. All right, well, before this thing derails any further, we'll shut it down. This has been episode 2 of Hope for Illinois. We do genuinely have hope for Illinois. Let's go make it happen because this state's got a bright future.